Hello, Jen here with my third challenge for the Love is in the Air online crop that we're doing over on the SCRAPS Shotz paper crafting Facebook group. The challenge for this layout is Scraps of Love. I know, I love scraps. I think every scrapbooker has a love-hate relationship with scraps. We love to hold on to all of our papers and all of our scraps, and we love to think that we're going to use them all and just keep creating these beautiful things, and that we are not wasting our papers and we're doing, something good by conserving our scraps and stretching our product and getting the most out of it, either because it's a collection that we really love or we've spent our hard-earned money on it, and so we're stretching it as much as we can, and we are going to use up every last bit of it. And so we love to hold on to those scraps, and it almost is like a second hobby for some people, where the organizing of scraps and planning what to do with your scraps and all those fun things, they're almost like a secondary hobby for a few of us. So definitely that is the love side of it. And we do probably have a bit of a hate relationship with scraps too, because over time they just accumulate, and what do you do with them if you're not actually pulling them out and getting them used up? And so this challenge is to really get you guys pulling those scraps out and see what you can do with them, get some of them used up. And by now it's the end of the third day of our crop, so you have been creating stuff Friday, Saturday, and today, which means you've probably accumulated a fair amount of scraps. So my personal challenge to you guys is maybe to go ahead and grab some of those scraps out from the different collections that you've been working with and different projects you've been working on, and see what you can do with them. So I have the scraps from the first layout that I did with my sketch, and I've kind of held on to them. And I think I explained in that video that these Valentine scraps, because I don't tend to accumulate a lot of Valentine's products, I don't have many Valentine's collections that I purchase. I tend to hold on to these ones a little bit longer and kind of get as much use out of them as I can, because I really just don't create a ton of Valentine's specific layouts. And actually these two layouts, the first one I created and this one, which is sort of a companion to that first one, they're not even Valentine's photos. They're actually anniversary photos from my husband and my 25th anniversary, which was in 2024. So yeah, it's, I don't tend to grab this too often. So I do like to hold on to these scraps a little bit longer than normal and try to stretch them out as much as I can, because I know I'm probably not purchasing another Valentine's collection unless one comes out that is really, really calling to me, or I have kind of put a good enough dent into these scraps that I know it's time to grab some more. So, yeah, this is kind of exactly where I love to use my scraps, is when I have these little bits and pieces, and I've maybe been working with this collection for a while, and I'm creating either, in this case, it's just one companion layout, so it's not really a true double page layout. It's kind of like the main layout about the event of us going out for dinner, and then this is the companion layout with some of the extra photos that I had. And so it's nice to be able to use the scraps from the first layout to put together a second layout that has all of those similar colors and similar patterns and that kind of thing. This is also something that I would do if I was maybe doing a 12 by 12 layout and then the other side was going to be pocket pages, or a pocket page with a bunch of photos. I could take all of the scraps from the first layout and use them to create the cards and the backgrounds and embellish my pocket pages. So I love using scraps in that way. But I do have a rule about scraps, and this is something that I personally have developed for myself, and I think a lot of us tend to create a few rules and regulations, guidelines to follow when it comes to keeping scraps. So if that is something that you struggle with, here's what I do. I keep scraps that are branding strips or the length of a branding strip. So you can see I just added some of those to this bottom portion of the layout. I keep those because I love to use strips in my scrapbooking, and I keep scraps that for me are more around the 3 by 3 size and up. Anything smaller than that, I'm not going to keep it unless it is part of a larger collection and I have a lot of that collection left over. I shouldn't say a lot of that collection left over. As long as I have enough to put together another layout, I will keep smaller scraps. But if I'm nearing the end of the collection or the end of these papers, and I don't really think I have enough to put another project together, I get rid of them. Sometimes I'll put a big bunch of scraps together to send to my son's daycare or to my kids' schools, because oftentimes, especially the kindergarten classrooms, they love to have scraps to put into their bucket of crafty stuff that the kids can pull out of. Occasionally, if you want to check my channel, actually, you can see me talking about this a little bit more. I will keep certain scraps if I think they're going to work in some of my traveler's notebooks that I do, because obviously that's a smaller page, and so smaller pieces of paper work really well for that. But I've really kind of honed my personal preference for scraps down quite a bit because it can get overwhelming. You can end up using just way too much. So I suggest to everybody, if you're starting to feel bogged down by scraps, give yourself some guidelines. Be realistic with them. Choose guidelines that you know are easy to follow. So give yourself maybe some parameters as far as the size of the scraps you keep or the types of scraps that you keep, or you could even give yourself some parameters, for example, like a specific sized container, and once that container is full, you need to either use it all up before you can put more scraps into it, or you need to go through it and get rid of some of the older scraps that you haven't used yet, and then you can add new scraps into it. Whatever it might be, I just think it's good to have a few little rules for yourself that you can set so that your scraps don't start to overtake you, and then you feel overwhelmed by them, and then really all you're doing is shuffling things around rather than actually pulling them out and getting them used up. So that is my little rule, or my few rules, I guess I should say, for scraps. And so now let me tell you what I'm doing here with some of these scraps. The first thing that I love to do is challenge myself to take papers that are not the size that I need for my background. So in this case, it's a 12 by 12 background. But I like to try to piece things together, and I do this quite a bit. So if you are going through my channel, going way back 10 years through my channel, you will notice this is definitely something that I have sort of always done right from the beginning, is piecing papers together to try to make them fit the size I need. So in this case, I took that piece of paper, that striped paper, and I pieced it together up at the top to stretch it into a full 12 by 12. I used another piece of paper that was already 12 by 12 so that I had a guideline, but you could definitely use a mat. I'm scrapbooking upstairs in my living room rather than at my desk downstairs. So I didn't have my mat with me to use that as a measurement. But I'll often just take another 12 by 12 paper and kind of use that as my guideline. So I pieced that together to make it look like I have a 12 by 12 paper. I was able to match up all of the stripes so that they look like they're running in the right direction. And I figured as I was putting this together, like here I just pointed to you, there's a line where the papers kind of meet each other on each of those sides. So I just put some embellishments there. They won't stay there, but I figured if that kind of thing is bugging me, then I can always put something there to kind of cover it up. So piecing the papers together for me is something that I like to give myself that challenge, and I find it fun to figure out how I can cut them to do that. I do that quite often when I'm making mats to go behind my photos, because for me, that's definitely a way that I like to use up my scraps. But I also don't mind those little details in the paper. There, I just pointed them to you. Again, I don't mind that that's there. I think that it brings texture and it just makes this look handmade, which it is. So it doesn't really bother me. If it is something that bothered you, definitely you could find some creative ways to kind of disguise those little spots. But that's something I like to do with scraps, is try to find a way to stretch them and make them appear like they're larger than they actually are. And my other kind of thing I love to do with scraps is mat my pictures and use them for layering. So you might only have a couple of little chunks of a pattern and they just become these fun little layers that you can tuck in behind a photo or behind an embellishment cluster to add a pop of color or bring a little bit of a pattern into an area of your layout. So those types of things I really enjoy doing with my scraps. You can always use your scraps to maybe punch little shapes out of. I have some teeny tiny little stars and hearts, so punching those to create embellishments is definitely something that you could do as well. And then the strips that I have at the bottom of the layout are another great way to use up longer strips and bring in some extra patterns. And I even used that one strip which had the barcode on it, but I just found a large sticker and I covered up that barcode so you would never even know that that was there. And interestingly enough, after I was done with all of this, with a couple of the scraps that I have left over, I still had enough of like a large enough piece that I actually cut out some hearts and I use those as the little tags for my kids' Valentine's presents. So even using those scraps in a way that has nothing to do with scrapbooking or paper crafting, you can definitely find maybe some fun little tags for a birthday present or whatever it might be. So lots of creative, interesting ways to use up your scraps. And a lot of this, once I was done with it, those little extra bits and pieces, I probably am not going to use again because I've used up almost all of these bits of papers, I should say, that I would put together. And so I did throw out some of those tinier scraps because I just know that I'm not going to use them again. And then I brought in other elements from that first layout. So the wooden hearts I brought in here. I'm using some of the same stickers. I've created sort of a visual triangle here with a few little embellishment clusters. The same sequins are in this layout. I also use some of the Tim Holtz gold spritz, and that was in the first layout as well. So a lot of similar elements and some of the exact same papers. Oh, that was my little guy showing me his candy. And some of the exact same papers from that first layout so that they match, but they're not a perfect 2-page spread. And I will show you the two of them side by side on Instagram. So you can definitely hop in over there and check out those photos to see what they look like together. Yeah. But that's pretty much it. This was a pretty simple layout to pull together. I wasn't loving it, I have to admit. As I started to kind of throw all these elements together, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And so I found myself fussing quite a bit. Like here, for example, I know I needed to bring in some more black and gold. I just kind of pointed there. There's black and gold on that sticker that says crushing, and then black and gold in the title. And then I needed it in a third spot, but it just wasn't quite laying right to make it look like a nice visual triangle with having the number 25 up at the top. And then I just decided to commit to it, because sometimes that's all you have to do. I firmly believe that you don't have to absolutely love every single layout that you create or every project you create like it's the best thing you've ever done. Sometimes you just have to get your pictures onto the paper. You have to kind of commit to things and then let it go. Walk away and know that you put in your best effort. You maybe learned something along the way. You can appreciate the journey, the creative journey of putting it together. And then it's okay to walk away, and it might grow on you. Most of the time, the layouts do grow on me. I definitely liked it a lot better once I did this. I felt like it just needed something else to make it feel complete. And so I'm going to I folded that top corner, and I'm going to tear a little piece over here, and I'm just backing it with it's newsprint essentially. And sort of I'm breaking my own rule. I only wanted to use scraps here, but I am cutting into a brand new piece of paper, 12 by 12 paper that hasn't been cut into yet. However, I'm justifying it by saying that I do have several pieces of that collection still left over. So I haven't created a new scrap that I won't want to grab and use. I still have multiple pieces of that particular collection from Simple Stories and the stickers left over. So that scrap will definitely get used up. But if I didn't have that, I think I would have probably gone for some black paper, maybe just some black cardstock, because I felt like it just needed some darker grounding color. And so this newspaper print brings in a little bit of interest, but also some more of that black, that kind of, I felt like it's grounding it a bit better. And I think I like it much, much more once I've added that. But again, I let it grow on me, and I don't get overly concerned, because ultimately my goal is to get all of this stuff into an album. And sometimes you just can't fuss. You have to just get it down, glue it down, stick and plonk, as Adele would say, and then, be okay with it. So this one's definitely growing on me. I hope you guys like it. That is it for me for challenges for today. Please check out the group so that you can play along as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And until next time, happy scrapping. Bye.